My Wi-Fi is still spinning. Okay, hey, I think that means we get to start the show. Welcome back, Mighty Vandals, to Tubs the Club, your University of Idaho affiliate on the Big Sky Podcast Network. I'm your host and really shitty producer today, Brian Marceau, joined by Trevan Pixley down in Lewiston-ish. Trevan, how's it going, dude?
Oh, not too bad. That game, now fully diving into the Idaho fandom side of things, was the first time I've really, been puckered up. My butthole was fully puckered during that game. And during Abilene Christian, I kind of felt like most of that was garbage time, and I wasn't really worried. But this time, the puckering was real from Trevan.
Yeah, so I had an 8th grade basketball coach who just and say what people tune in for to hear about 8th grade basketball in the early aughts in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, right? So I had a 8th grade basketball coach who loved the metaphor of like you couldn't stick an oil needle in his ass. Yeah, but not kidding, 8th grade. So yeah, I think that was us. That was a lot of Idaho fandom. So. Okay, hey, what in God's name happened? So Idaho goes down at UC Davis 28-26. UC Davis, number 14 team in the nation. And like the narrative of this game was, Jesus, just all over the place. Idaho starts out right away looking like they're going to make their mark, score touchdowns on their first 2 possessions, had a very impressive 3-and-out on Davis's first possession. By the way, those 2 touchdowns, 9-yard touchdown pass from Jack Wagner to Emerson Cortez Menjivar, and then a Nate Thomas 1-yard touchdown run. That's those 2 scores. So Idaho gets up 14-0. Yeah, but Idaho goes a long time then without putting many points on the board. In the second quarter, Idaho scores 3 on a Cameron Pope 43-yard field goal, which is also after Pope had missed a 51-yard field goal earlier. But yeah, that was the issue, is Idaho scores 14 early, 17 in the first half, and then they're not on the board again until in the fourth quarter. A 22-yard field goal from Cameron Pope makes it 20-35. Yeah, I skipped a few UC Davis scores because after Idaho went up 14-0, it was pretty much all Davis for quite a while. Then 44 seconds left, Emerson Cortez Menjivar gets a 19-yard touchdown pass from Nick Josephek. Yeah, I haven't even talked about that yet because of how wild this game was. Yeah, Jack Wagner goes down late in the third quarter. Idaho goes to their third-string quarterback. Honestly, it might be fourth-string because Holden B was injured before the season starts, so we don't know how hierarchy shakes out. But the quarterbacks we have, Nick Josephek is the number 3. Josephek looks great in relief. He's the one who engineered that comeback at the end. However, Idaho fails to get a 2-point conversion to tie it up. That's why it's 28-26. But I think I cannot skip before we talk about the rest of the game. There's 2 fourth down conversions that this is going to be the story of the game that we'll hit on later. Twice Idaho goes for it on fourth down in goal, or fourth down instead of taking 2 very short field goals. Frustrating as hell because had Idaho taken either of those field goals, I mean, you guys can do the math. Idaho loses by 2, but left 6 from field goals that team could have taken. There you go. Yeah, frustrating as hell. But which is say again, like Idaho should have won this game, guys. Idaho absolutely should have won this game. Why are we frustrated? Well, obviously a couple things went well, right, Trevan? If we're frustrated about a game where Idaho, hey, I'm going to bring this up, kind of screwing up the order, guys. Idaho essentially has 5 turnovers against number 14 team in the nation, including those 2 failed 4th down conversions. Leaves at least 6 on the board that they could have taken. Also missed a field goal too. So that's 9 potential points that Idaho left on the field, in addition to the turnovers. And we're still frustrated because Idaho's in position to tie this game with their 3rd string quarterback engineering the comeback drive. So if that is the case, Trevan, a couple things had to go well. So we're going to talk about what went well. But remember, Tubbs Club presented by Snake River Stampede Canadian Whiskey. Trevan, what went well? Why are we frustrated? If Idaho just gets their ass kicked, we're not frustrated. So obviously something still went well.
Yeah, things went well, and just to not harp on it too much because we are going to talk about it a little bit more as the show goes on. Idaho gets in its way in this one, right? They don't take the points, and I referenced it in the preview show. I didn't want to see Jason Eck take these 4th down risks if they didn't make a whole lot of sense. Even if they went with the analytics, these fake analytics that I don't believe in because no one's ever seen them. So I was hoping that would be something he kind of veered away from, especially against one of the, better teams in the Big Sky. Obviously the best FCS team Idaho has played up to this point, but unfortunately that wasn't the case in this one. But you're right, Brian. Some good things did happen in this one. I think the first main thing I want to hit, first of all, is Jordan Dwyer and Emerson Cortez. I think they played very well. Jordan Dwyer continues to get open in many different ways. He's a fantastic route runner, has reliable hands. And Emerson, that kid's just fast. I mean, he comes out like a bullet. Like, he is a very talented wide receiver. And I think, the more that he gets playing time, I think he's going to improve his hands and become more of a polished receiver. Right now, he's more kind of just getting those reverses and things. But once that happens, I think he's going to be a very dangerous player in this offense.
Yeah, Jordan Dwyer, 8 catches for 114 yards, did not find the end zone, was targeted 18 times. So like they were calling the number of Jordan Dwyer. And I say they, the plural, because, hey, we had 2 quarterbacks to talk about. Jack Wagner plays around 3/4 of the game, goes 13 of 25, 178 yards, a touchdown and 2 picks. And then in relief, something that went well offensively, if you just read the box score, you're not going to understand how this went well. Nick Josephek in relief. The numbers are, I don't think Josephek's numbers tell the story of what he actually did. He's 9-19 passing for 96 yards and 1 touchdown. Also rushed 6 times for 55 yards. But Wagner had one of the games like he's had last 3 games. Starts out hot early, but after the first few drives, struggles with accuracy, kind of sprays all over the place. And the offense stagnates a bit. When Josephek came in, the play calling began to look very different. Josephek was not throwing like exclusively passes traveling beyond 20 yards in the air. He starting to hit those intermediate passes that it's pretty clear the coaching staff is not comfortable calling for Jack Wagner, or he's not getting through his progressions to the point of hitting some of those. But additionally, like Nick Stutzman is saying in the comment section, when Nick had to run, Nick Josephek, that is, he ran well. Yeah, Josephek was 55 rushes on 6 attempts. He was effective on the ground, and he was not inhibited about rushing at all either. He was decisive with passing, but when he tucked and ran, he was decisive too. So, like, hey, interesting to see what that means in the future. Because, hey, like, spoiler alert, I actually liked how the offense looked a lot better with Nick Josephek calling the shots. Felt like, I'm not saying it's Jack Lane-esque, because, I mean, Lane's different, but it felt probably like a simpler version of what we were expecting to see with Jack Lane as a starter, day one, which is not what we've seen. It's just been very different with Jack Wagner. So, hey, I want to say offensively, Josephek, great in relief. But something else that did go well, I mean, I think Idaho's O-line is showing some improvement. I mean, like the quarterback's under duress a little bit, and like, hey, some of the like Joseph X rushes were when the pocket collapsed a little bit, but man, even with those injuries, the O line's looking solid. I mean, look at a story that's gonna a takeaway from this game, I think. And hey, in the hashtag Only Tubs Discord, patreon.com/Tubs Club, this was certainly something we talked about, Trevan. Which after I'll just bring this up and let you talk about the run game for a second. Something that went well. Idaho was able to run the ball for a decent amount of this game. On the game, 34 rushes for 185 yards. Right around like 5.6-ish yards per carry, right around there. And it wasn't buttressed by like a 75-yard rush. Like there were a couple long rushes. Like, hey, Elisha Cummings had a long of 18. Joseph Eck had a long 21. Nate Thomas had a long 22. But Idaho was able to run the ball relatively steadily.
Yeah, the consistency in the run game has kind of been there all year, and that's a credit to the offensive line. I think they, again, have looked very solid, all year, and I think this was another, good example of the O-line play getting better. I thought they kind of looked a little shaky last week, but I think this week was a pretty solid rebound against a better defensive line that they faced last week, I think. So, I think it was a good showing from that offensive line. I just want to touch a little bit also on Joseph Eck while I have a chance here. I also think he had a good showing when he came in, and he just looked like he had the confidence to run the offense. Like you said, he was decisive, but he also had balls. I mean, he was going out there and just taking long runs. He wasn't sliding. He wasn't afraid of contact. You're seeing Wagner will take his runs and go out of bounds, which is smart for the health of the quarterback. But Joseph Eck was, confident with taking those 20-yard runs. And yeah, I liked where the offense was with him. Whether it was just the pace of play they were playing at, or Joseph Eck, was actually, delivering at that point, could be up in the air. Because I think, when teams kind of get into that situation, the pace of play, kind of affects how everything kind of goes. So we'll see. I think the offense did look good on that final drive, though.
Yeah, and we've got to talk a little bit defensively. Because, I mean, keep in mind, man, UC Davis is a good team, guys. UC Davis, like their team identity is going to be offense first. The guy who I think is at this point, most talented offensive player in the Big Sky, Land Larson. Well, Idaho holds UC Davis on the game. Now, hey, sacks contributed to this, of course. Idaho holds UC Davis to 26 rushing yards on 31 total attempts, including offensive player of the year, preseason player of the year, Land Larson, 18 rushes for 46 yards. He did get a touchdown. And hey, Larson, he produced elsewhere too. But Larson has been tearing teams apart on the ground. And Idaho's front seven absolutely kept the UC Davis run game in check. Now we'll talk about the pass game a little bit later. But hey, keep that in mind with what Idaho did on the ground. But with how much Idaho struggled offensively for the majority of this game, defensively, Idaho actually they gave up 28 points, but like that's not a nightmare or something like that. They held their own in spite of more than a few times. It's hard to not talk about both sections right now, Trevan. I just feel like there's some judgment calls right now that just don't accept that Idaho should be understood as a defense first team. Idaho should be understood as a team that if they're going to beat teams like Davis, teams like Montana State, they need lower scoring games. And that just necessitates some changes, which we'll talk about in the other part of the show, to make things easier on the defense. But Idaho showed up defensively for the most part, had a timely stripped, a great, very well-timed strip of Trent Tompkins, wide receiver for UC Davis, that is part of why this game even came down to the wire in the first place. So, I talked a little bit defensively about what went well. Trevan, tell me what you saw going well on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I think you hit on the most obvious thing. When you can stop Land Larson, just keep him at bay, and the way that they kept him at bay, you'd look at that box score and you would assume Idaho had won the game, because if you hold Land Larson to 40-something yards rushing, 46 yards rushing, that's a good sign of things in that game. But again, we'll get into it later, but Idaho just makes some poor judgment calls that don't go their way. I was very impressed with Malachi Williams. Kind of filled more of a bigger role in this one with Keyshawn James Newby on a pitch count, with his injury. D-line as a whole played well. The linebackers, again, we can kind of save that for things that didn't go so well or were, somewhat average. But I think the defensive line played well. I'm a little hesitant on the linebacker play today, but I'll go with the D-line playing well and stopping the run is what went well on the defensive side.
Yeah. So we have another side to talk about because Idaho lost, and a game Idaho should have won. So look, if Idaho should have won a game, and this would have been so huge. It would have been Idaho's third ranked FCS win, fourth win on the season. This was a big opportunity. Slip through Idaho's fingers. So we have some other stuff to talk about. Before we get there, got to talk about Snake River Stampede Canadian whiskey. Look, this is probably not a small batch 1915 night, guys. But look, Snake River is one of the best buys in Idaho State liquor stores. You either get their entry-level Snake River Stampede, double barrel finished, first fill bourbon, then Oloroso sherry casks, $26.95 on a regular month. When it's on sale, it's like $24.95. If you want to class it up and celebrate a win, which I'm not doing tonight, then you'd reach up and grab the Snake River 1915 small batch. It's aged an extra 2 years. It's a double barrel finish. It's first fill bourbon and then ex-Canadian rye whiskey casks. Either way, you can't go wrong. Hey, that's a 1915 is a premium Canadian whiskey in Idaho State liquor stores at $38.95. So doesn't matter which one you get, man, but grab yourself a Snake River today. Trevan, we got a few things we can talk about that did not go so well. So I'm going to hand you the wheel. You tell me what direction you want to go in first.
Yeah, I think hitting on the most, obvious thing that didn't go well was the judgment calls from Jason Eck, leaving 9. Well, we'll go 6. 6 points on the table because one was a missed field goal. That was probably the right call. Jason Eck is known for this. He's known to be a gambling man. And when it pays off, everybody praises him. And when it doesn't go so well, we have reasons to question him. He does own up to these gambles in the post-game press conferences, which is admirable. But when you have owned up to these dating back to when you first took the job, when are you going to start learning from them? Because it's not like these fourth down calls that he's making are new, and it's not like the play calls themselves are different either. If you look at these fourth down play calls or these fourth down decisions, and you look at all the failed ones Idaho has had over the years, they are all very similar in the ways that they don't work. And they're all very similar situationally where they shouldn't go for it. But for some reason, Jason Eck thinks he can, break the streak or whatever it may be. I'm not one that usually harps too much on the play calling or the decision makings of coaches. I don't, that's never been my jive. I try not to do that. But when it's really clear and out there like this is, I think it's the main thing and the most important thing to hit on.
Yeah. Okay. So what you're talking about is, I just want to set the stage a teeny bit for the narrative of this game. Yeah. Idaho's first 4 offensive possessions are a touchdown, a missed field goal, and a converted field goal. So the first 4 drives, Idaho's able to move the ball that made field goal, 5 minutes and 17 seconds left in the second quarter. After that point, here's Idaho's next possession. 3-and-out punt, 2-and-out interception, a 9-play, 66-yard drive that gets to the UC Davis 5 and is a turnover on downs instead of 3 points on a field goal. Next possession, another interception. By the way, the interception prior was the wide receiver pass from Tony, I think it's Tony Harsty. That in the Discord I joked, okay, let's see a wide receiver pass here on 4th down or on whatever down on second down, and they did. So then after the interception, turnover, and downs, we have another interception. This one from Lane, one play drive, throws pick. The next possession, another turnover on downs, then a punt. Idaho doesn't get back on the board until 4 minutes and 28 seconds left in the fourth quarter. So that is the drought from 5 minutes left in the second quarter until 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Idaho comes up dry from mostly a combination of turnovers and, hey, like, we love Jason Eck. Like, hey, guys, the sky is not falling here. But at some point, you got to hope Jason Eck's going to put together. Idaho needs these games to be lower scoring to beat better teams. They just have to. And at some point, you got to take 3 points, man. 3 points, 2 separate times.
1-point game. To make it a 1-point game, bro. Like, literally, that drove me nuts. Up the wall. I could not believe that in my, like, there's no way. There's no way you don't kick that field goal to make it a 1-point game. Like, I get it. You get the touchdown, you win, you're at the 5. But why would you not? With how your defense is playing here, right? Okay, sorry, I'm going to go off for a second. With the way your defense is playing here, you take the field goal, you make it a 1-point game. You know, if they don't get an electric kickoff return there, your defense is playing well. You get a turnover on downs, you get another field goal, you take the lead. The same thing with them going for it again. It's like you can punt it here, play the field position. Your defense is playing so well. Like, identify that your defense is playing well and don't put them in crappy situations, because they're trusting their defense, but they're trusting them while also putting them in shitty situations.
Yeah, and that was frustrating thing. Like, hey, Super George 111 in the comment section says it's almost like we're playing with our backup QB, which I get. Hey, that's the thing for me here is you're playing with a backup quarterback. You know you're not going to score 45 on Davis. So, like, hey, 3 points it mattered in this game. But 3 points twice would have really mattered in this game. And look, we saw this exact same premise last week of, like, hey, what was the touchdown for Abilene Christian to get momentum, turn the game around? Not taking the points. At some point, man.
When are you going to learn from it? That's like the big thing, you know? Because
I hope so.
It's happened so many times. It's owning up to it. I get, but it's like, there's a line, and, you know, the great coaches walk it, the good coaches get burned for it, you know, and it's like not even the bad coaches get burned for it. Like, you really have to be great at making those calls to, like, not get hate for it and to, like, know when to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I guess that's just what's frustrating, because we know Jason Eck's a good coach.
Yeah.
We're frustrated because on the road, we feel that Idaho should have beat the number 14 team in the nation while starting our backup quarterback, which then became our third string quarterback, while being down 2 starting O linemen for the year, while the two most important contributors on the front 7, Dallas Afalava and Keyshawn James Newby, were on a pitch count, while the team lost Abraham Williams like 4 plays into the game, while Jake Cox, starting tight end, went down in the first quarter and did not return. All of those things happened, and Idaho still should have won this game. But here's another thing that didn't go well, and that's why it's frustrating that Idaho. Honestly, feel like Idaho should have won this game by 13 points. Idaho had 5 turnovers. If you count the failed 4th down conversions, that's an extra 2. But hey, let's pretend you are just reading the box score and that's it. Idaho loses the turnover battle 3-1. 3 picks, 2 Jack Wagner picks, and Tony Harsty throwing that wide receiver pass that, I mean, I don't know why. I don't know why they called that play. Tony Harsty threw into triple coverage and couldn't even see the guy he was throwing to. I don't know why. Please. Again, we love Jason Eck. Get that goddamn wide receiver pass out of the playbook. Yeah. But that 5 effective turnovers and 3 interceptions, none of which were thrown by the third string quarterback. That's another thing that did not go well. But I guess, hey, like, gotta talk about Jack Wagner for a minute. Wagner is hard to talk about in a decisive way, listeners. So, hey, you're going to hear me explain myself. My bad. Because on one hand, we know he's a backup. We know he's doing his best. We know he's young. He's super inexperienced. We know there are moments where he also looks like he's pretty good. But we also know Wagner just isn't a very accurate passer. He's like 50% every single game. That's just who he is. When he misses, typically his misses are long, and they're pretty long, so they're not picks. But today, that was not the case. Wagner threw 2 picks. I think when Wagner's out there, it really does limit what the team can do passing wise. Like, I don't think it's an accident that Wagner mostly throws deep balls to either Mark Hamper or Jordan Dwyer. I just don't think that's an accident. He does. I don't think right now that he has the ability to cut up a defense and make successive like short to intermediate passes, some of which are going to go down the middle, aka where if your accuracy is off, you're going to throw a pick. I just don't think Wagner has the ability to do that. And that's part. Good teams are going to key on that, man. Good teams like Davis are going to make Wagner have to beat them. But I guess, sorry, well, that's the other thing that's frustrating is it seemed like the team went away from the run game when the run game was successful. So like two things at once with Wagner, like, hey, like, of course, mitigated expectations, but we know why, like, it's not an accident. He's the backup, guys. But at the same time, if you have mitigated expectations, man, can we lean on the running game a little bit more, Trevan? I'm just going to hand it off to you so you can go with this. Like,
why don't they lean on the run game a little bit more? That's the biggest question mark, I think, all season. When they have a backup quarterback in there, they really want to go with this Jack Wagner deep ball, Jack Wagner to the sidelines, which, to give him some credit, like throwing that out route and throwing towards the sidelines, he did connect on a fair share of those. So I think that was probably what went the most well for Jack Wagner tonight. But he did struggle, and this probably was his worst game.
Definitely his worst game. I mean, he hadn't thrown any picks. He threw two picks tonight. This
was definitely his worst game as a Vandal. And, he was banged up, and, there's maybe his shoulder was bothering him during the game, and that caused him to struggle. But, I think you're right. There's just some accuracy issues with him, and there's been accuracy issues throughout the season. He didn't light the world on fire. Obviously, those first two drives were pretty solid, pretty great. If only they kept that momentum up.
But that's 3 weeks in a row, though. 3 weeks in a row. He's like that.
Exactly. And it's so perplexing to me that they don't want to stick with this run game, and they don't want to, just fully commit to it, because Eli and Nate Thomas are very good. They are a very good running back duo. And
Cummings, 11 rushes, 72 yards. Nate Thomas, 12 rushes for 41 yards. Like I said earlier, Idaho on the game averaged 5.4 yards per rush.
And it's like they were really committed to it with, Anthony Woods, obviously. And, one Anthony Woods, during his prime in Idaho is probably equivalent to those two, and it's like we can get those two involved and it would be a lot better. And these wide receivers that you're throwing to, I think I seen somebody in the comments say, they're not going to get that automatic 6-yard Hayden Hatton connection like that they had last year. None of these receivers are that automatic. So just leaning on that run game more, I think would go, a long ways.
Yeah. Hey, two comments I want to address. Jordan Jacobs, it's on the screen right now, saying we have to realize we no longer have an automatic 6 yards on Vonnie to Hatton completion whenever we need it. We still call games like that's in the bag. And then Super George 111 saying wide receiver drops are an issue too. Now, hey, Super George, you're not wrong, but throw an asterisk there. Look, hey, Mark Hamper dropped a touchdown he needed to have. Like, this is part of why, like I say, that Idaho should have absolutely won this game. You can look how many opportunities are we talking about that just slipped through Idaho's fingertips. Now, Idaho did get some. It's not like Idaho didn't get any bounces too, because it did. But Hamper dropped a big touchdown. That's a big deal. Hamper did have a bit of a rebound game, relatively speaking, compared to last week. Actually, maybe no, he didn't. He just had two kind of big catches. 2 catches, 48 yards. My bad.
It felt like he had way more than that.
It felt like he did, but no, he didn't. Yeah. The Alex Moore had the second most receptions on the team, 4 catches of 40 yards on 5 targets.
And that did not feel like
Hamper was targeted. Yeah, Hamper targeted 8 times, 2 catches. Yeah, I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't looked at the box score. So, hey, maybe I take that back a little. But the thing I want to bring up, hey, Jordan Dwyer had one of these types of drops, is Wagner's accuracy. He has an arm, but he throws some really tough balls to catch. When he'll, throw a laser, to guys like on his intermediate, the short to intermediate passes he throws sometimes, like a laser into traffic that's behind or a little bit too far ahead or a little bit too low. So hey, Super George, you're not wrong at all. Like we need the receivers to pick up more of those. But of course, it's a preposterous expectation to expect every tough throw that comes these guys' way they're going to catch. It's no one does. What they need are more routine catches right into the hands. And they're at this point, we're not getting quite enough. But Joseph looked good, man. I loved what we saw. I really liked what we saw out of Nick Joseph. I'm curious what math is going to go on with the coaching staff between now and the homecoming NAU game next week, because I thought there was a lot to like out of Nick Joseph tonight. But hey, there's other stuff we got to talk about. Defensively, look, we brought up that a lot did go well defensively, but hey, like the big area where Idaho was less successful was in the pass game. I mean, Miles Hastings is a pretty good Big Sky quarterback. He's up and down, but when he's up, he's probably among the best quarterbacks in the league. Well, he goes 25 of 32 for 248 yards, and throws 3 touchdowns. And in addition to that, I just got to say, man, Land Larison, we talked about how he was held in check in the run game for the most part. Well, Land Larison had 4 catches for 54 yards and a touchdown, as well as, the game-ending onside kick recovery, in addition to 3 converted pass attempts for Land Larison. So, hey, the pass game itself is where Idaho got cut up a bit, and where UC Davis was able to expose Idaho in particular. And I'm curious if we're going to see this from other teams now, Trevan. When Davis went tempo against Idaho, just like when ACU went tempo against Idaho, that's where they had the most success in the pass game. Now, that's going to be less of an issue with a team like NAU that's run first, but I have to expect that trend is going to be something Big Sky coaches are going to start keying on when they play Idaho.
Yeah, no, 100%. I was, while I was watching it, I was like, I'm surprised this doesn't happen more often. I think you sent a message in the Discord right when I was thinking it. And it's something that will draw penalties from Idaho. It's something that is going to get them out of their scheme or their alignment. It's going to mess them up. And UC Davis has dialed it up. You talked about Miles Hastings. Miles Hastings is off and on, but when he fucking plays Idaho, that guy fucking delivers. I don't know, the 2 times I've watched him play against Idaho, he's fucking on fire. He delivers. And it was really, in pass coverage, the DBs, I know Abraham, he was hurt. Andrew Marshall was really kind of the only stud guy in the secondary that was out there, in my opinion. But they kind of got diced up throughout, And the linebackers were caught in pass coverage, and they looked silly. They looked silly all night. That Land Larison touchdown reception, Zach Johnson got mossed. And that was a very bad sight to see. Yeah, Corey Thomas, thank you, Super George. I was thinking about who was the one that had the rough game today. He had a rough out tonight.
Well, Thomas got hurt too, didn't he?
Yeah, he got hurt, but it was later in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but hey, for those keeping track, that means, 2 of Idaho's top 4 cornerbacks, CB cornerbacks, yes, that was not enunciated on my end well enough, went down. So that meant, Andrew Marshall, number 7, still there, but then KJ Trujillo played some snaps that if everyone's healthy, he probably wouldn't be playing. So that's the big thing. But hey, I want to talk about in the comments section, Nick Stutzman brings up, hey, Idaho did get some bounces because Idaho. Okay, we have referenced the coaching related stuff that was frustrating, not taking the points in consecutive weeks, and just here's the pass run distribution for Idaho: 45 pass attempts, 34 total rush attempts, might be close to 32 sacks. That's just not what we were expecting to see with Jack Wagner as a quarterback, and just a lot of deep strikes where I just don't think the coaching staff has faith in Wagner throwing over the middle and throwing intermediate passes. And the degree of difficulty to engineer drives that way is you just have to make a lot of right choices. You have to keep yourself on the right track, Trevan. For many plays, managing some higher degree difficulty stuff, the kind of thing that the offense expected Jack Lane was pretty much going to navigate because that's who he is. I just don't think they trust Jack Wagner to do that, and that's why they shoot for bigger plays with Wagner. That's just That's just what they've been doing. But Idaho, Tim Plow saw that Jason Eck made some questionable calls, and Tim Plow said, okay, I'm going to get on this action too. Tim Plow, towards the end of the game, terrible job at trying to run down the clock, including calling, I think it was a third down pass attempt, which look, Davis ended up punting anyway. But Tim Plow was part of the reason this game stayed close with some very questionable late game calls. He's an offensive guy too, so like he wants to be aggressive, but hey, once in a while, just hand the ball off. But Idaho was the beneficiary there. There's another one, like the pass to Hamper, another tough pass that Hamper was not able to come away with. Like bounces up off his face mask and definitely should have been picked off by Davis. They didn't come down with it. So just to say, Idaho had some breaks too. But in the end, this is a 28-26 game where Idaho gave away 6 points. They've on counting missed field goal, gave away 9. Turned the ball over 3 times in addition to two turnovers on downs. Were down some key defensive players. Lost more key defensive players, throughout the game. Lost Jake Cox, who had been the most reliable tight end, especially as a blocker. And still, again, lose Jack Wagner. And it's a 2-point game. It's a game that I feel like if Idaho plays this game over 5 times, they probably win it the other 4. But hey, UC Davis is a good team. So hey, let's.
You're sounding like the right track guide here, Brian.
Well, it's you should be frustrated, but look at all the things you can point to that went wrong.
Yeah, no,
and it was a 2-point game. UC Davis looks like a playoff team. So hey, maybe you adjust your expectations of Idaho, where if you were thinking Idaho's a top 3 team in the nation as far as playoffs are concerned with Jack Wagner quarterback, yeah, we probably dialed that down a notch. But is Idaho still a good team? Yeah. Is Idaho still going to be expected to make playoffs? Yeah. It's like, hey, it's the sky's not falling, but we're frustrated for a reason because we see the opportunity that could have been that slipped away. Before we get to players of the game and over other broad takeaways, Trevan, got to talk about Snake. I already talked about Snake River. We got to talk about Hughes River Expedition. So if you're looking for a great all-inclusive week-long vacation, do not look past your backyard. Hughes River Expeditions has been Vandal owned and operated since 1976 and are ready to take you on the vacation of a lifetime. Enjoy a multi-day trip down the Middle Fork of the Salmon, the main Salmon River in no return, the Salmon River Canyons of the Selway, and check out special trips like the one to see the Perseid meteor shower. Camp on pristine beaches, run amazing whitewater, hike scenic trails, spot wildlife, soak in beautiful natural hot springs, and fish some of the most remote stretches of river in the country. You just bring it close, let HRE handle the rest. So grab paddle, catch dinner, and ride the bull all throughout the Gem State. Call them now at 406-540-4450 or check them out at hughesriver.com. All right, players of the game, Trevan, starting on the offensive side.
I got to go Jordan Dwyer again. I feel like I have given Jordan Dwyer Offense Player of the Week damn near every single week. He had 8 receptions, right, for 114 yards. He got targeted, I believe, Marceau, you brought it up 16 times. 18 times, which is ridiculous. I mean, they obviously trust him. Those are, Hayden Hatten-like numbers for targets. And it's like, I mean, how much did Hayden even get targeted that much back last year? It's insane how much they're calling his number. He's been impressive. He's doing the right things. I got to give it to Jordan Dwyer.
Yeah, season high in receptions for Dwyer, season highs in yards for Dwyer. So, yeah, that's one. So mine, honestly, I'd probably go Jordan Dwyer too, but to address someone else, I would love to have said Elisha Cummings, but he didn't get the ball quite enough. So, man, I'm going to say Nick Josephack just because he comes in late in the third. The team's behind. The team's in the rut it was in, as I described earlier, where they went from 8 minutes left, 5 minutes left in the second quarter until 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter without a score. Josephack comes in and looked hey, hot take, easy to have a hot take when you've seen a guy play once, right? Right, Trevan? I like Idaho's offense better with Josephack than Wagner. I just do. I like what he brings to the table. Hey, maybe there's a reason he's number 3. So I'm not I don't know if the issue is like, hey, Wagner's hurt, so that like diminished it. That's why he's a little bit hesitant to run the ball, and that changed things. I don't know. But Joseph came in, and he was the spark Idaho needed offensively. Threw some great passes, also like moving the ball with his legs. Huge deal. So yeah, I'll bring up Nick Joseph as my player of the game offensively. All right, defensive side of the ball.
On defense, I'm gonna go Malachi Williams. He was constantly bringing pressure on Miles Hastings. He even had a pressure where he was just putting his hands up towards him, and I think he still ended up getting the sack on that one. Had a total of 1.5 sacks, 1.5 tackle for loss, and 5 tackles. So I think, a very big game for him, especially with Keyshawn James Newby not on the field.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with your call is again probably the right call. I'm gonna go with Jakari Larmond, more representative of what Idaho did on the ground. Stuffing UC Davis, Larmond. Hey, like the numbers don't scream at you. Three solo tackles and and a sack. So hey, like that matters. But Davis couldn't run. Davis is a good running team, and they could not move the ball on the ground against Idaho. Like Idaho had them completely bottled up in that regard. Of course, through the air is a different story. So, all right, man, Trevan. Other takeaways, broad takeaways. Hand you the wheel again.
Yeah, no, it's just hopefully this is a wake-up call as far as play calling goes for that the offensive side of the ball. I don't know necessarily if I would even say play calling. I mean, not to say that the play calls that they called on those situations were great, but just situational awareness, knowing when to hold them, knowing when to fold them, and not just being so aggressive in those moments. And I'm going to be interested to see if there's a little bit of quarterback controversy heading into next week. I mean, I don't think one side or the other gives you, I guess, much more at this point. I don't know. I think Joseph played well in the drives that he was out there, but I don't know if it's so much for me to say that he's, that much better than Wagner. But I think to open it up, would be fun. See some quarterback competition.
Yeah, I gotta say, I just feel like Idaho offensively is much more versatile with what the team was comfortable letting Joseph do. Yeah. I just thought that looked like a more complete offensive team to me. That looked like a team that might not have to exclusively rely on big plays to get their points. So we're going to see if that matters. But I got to say, I don't think we're the only people who saw Joseph out there and were like, okay, like we've got something here. I don't know what my expectations were for the third stringer, but they weren't this, right? So, hey, Max Antush in the comment section, Idaho's a top 3 thing with play calling that fits the personnel. That's the thing that is weird. I know what you're saying when you say situational awareness and like you're saying play calling itself. It's, to me, it does feel like there's a gap between what the team truly is and what the staff wants the team to be. And I feel like that's like the dissonance or that's the frustration that we're seeing. Because I get like the reason I brought up earlier. Look, when I picked this game, I picked it like Idaho to win 27-21. So okay, I didn't pick the right score, but this is how Idaho's been for the last year against good teams. They haven't broken 30 against a good team since like Nevada, and Nevada wasn't good in 2023. So that's who this team is when the other side is, not getting their ass kicked like Albany. And it just feels at times like the coaching staff still thinks like, no, like they can win this game 38-27 or something like that, or 38-21, when we're approaching 2 years of this is what the team is. And if you understand that your team is probably not going to break 30, a field goal starts to matter a little bit more, Trevan, and 2 field goals starts to matter a lot more. It's like, I guess it's just so weird to me that we're usually ecstatic about Idaho defensively. And it just seems like sometimes the coaching staff doesn't, I don't know if it's they don't trust the defense. I don't know if this is just who Jason Eck is, in the same way, hey, Bobby Houck is who he is. I know I bring this comparison up and people bitch about it. I don't give a fuck. I think that I know Jason Eck is an aggressive dude, and that's just kind of how he plays. That's who he is. But, man, just dial it down a notch, because we love the guy. He's doing a ton right. But if in fact, takes the field goal 2 separate times. Idaho comes away with a win here. Hey, those calls haven't really cost Idaho, but they did today.
I get the sense that the team trusts their defense so much that they feel like they can go for these fourth downs. Like that's what I get. And if that's the case, they need to start taking the points and fucking playing the field position battle, because that's kind of where I'm at. That's what I feel.
So what you're saying is, hey, Marceau, it's the inverse. They trust their defense so much that they're fine saying, oh yeah, we'll give away god awful field position for you. By the way, we'll give you no margin for error. We know you guys are coming through. Yeah. Which is also, side note, like maybe it's that they trust what Jack Wagner can do, what this offense can do overall too much, is the other way that you could put it.
That's how I feel. They got so much they got so much false confidence in Wagner and so much in the defense that's like, we'll give them the field position. This defense isn't going to break. They've proved it, and we're gonna get the ball back, or we're gonna hold them to 3 in this scenario.
Yeah, because had they taken those field goals, though, that would be the first good team Idaho broke 30 against in a long, long time. I love the cat in the background there.
Hey, dude, it's a staple. Andrew.
Yeah, so I don't even, it's hard to me that this is now hard to like thread the needle on what you're going to come away with. Cause like, again, like a shit ton went wrong for Idaho and they still should have won the game. So like, is the sky falling? No, of course not. Should you think Idaho's playoff team? Duh. But the margin for
got to change. That's
the margin for error is a little, for a good team, is a little bit less than you might typically expect. Cause until Idaho starts showing they can regularly move the ball, well, they haven't done it. We've had, hey, the sample size, we're 5 games in, Trevan. Every single game, Idaho's gone through a pretty long scoring drought. And it honestly, it almost cost them in every game except, Albany is the only one that was not scoring drought. 4 out of 5 games, Idaho has had very long scoring droughts. Now, like, you want to rule out FBS Oregon, hey, fine, I'm all for that. But Wyoming, same thing. Idaho almost gave away that Wyoming game by not taking points. ACU not taking points is what ignited their comeback. And then this game, Idaho lost because they didn't take points. Taylor Cash saying quick counterpoint, take the field goal, then Plow kicks it at the end, and you end up with a 3-point difference.
That's too much math for me to think about. Right now.
Yeah, but I mean, Taylor, you're correct that X changes one thing, is going to change the rest of the game. Like, hey, 100% correct. What doesn't change is the fact that this was a very close game that Idaho gave up 2 scores. They said, hey, these 2 scores are not that important. So I don't know, dude.
It's been consistent too. Like it's not like if this was something that happened once, right? This was just a big oopsie, like this was a big whoopsie daisy, like just bad decisions. It would be one thing, but this has been constant ever since, the Eck era began. And they gotta start learning from it at some point.
You'd hope so.
Yeah.
But anyway, part of why you're hearing anxiety, part of like why in the #OnlyTubs Discord, again, patreon.com/Tubs the Club, it was exploding the entire game, wire to wire. If you want to talk Vandal football, especially on road games, there is only one place in the world to be. Join the #OnlyTubs Discord. Costs less than a cup of coffee a month. But man, the reason there's the extra anxiety is Northern Arizona looks good right now. Northern Arizona just beat the hell out of Sacramento State. That's who Idaho's hosting. Now, keep in mind, we'd already penciled in a handful of like 50-50 games for Idaho. Weber State had previously been one of those 50-50 games. Just rotate that out with NAU. Weber's lost right now. NAU is not. So like that overall component of what the schedule actually is, I don't think it's changed that much. But right now it does feel like, okay, Idaho just lost again. They should have won. And now Idaho gets to play a team that's feeling pretty damn good about themselves. Trevan, does that change, talk about it that way. Does that change your calculus on your takeaways from this game whatsoever?
I mean, not Really, I don't know. I come out of this feeling relatively negatively. Um, I I think it's easy to look at the positives and say, yeah, Idaho was right there. There's, if this goes this way, then Idaho wins this game, right? But NAU is looking good, and that's I don't know. I don't know if I'm penciling that in as a guarantee right now, but if the offense and the team can fucking put together like those first two drives throughout the whole fucking game, they can do it. But that's the big if.
Or at least like not have that ocean where it's almost 3/4 of the game with nothing.
Yeah.
So hey, James Aldrich, the big whoopsie daisy against should have been a good enough teaching moment to take points. James talking about the narrow loss to Montana in 2023. We've got Jonathan Jacobs saying 45 pass attempts, 6.1 yards per attempt, 34 rush attempts, 5.4 yards per attempt. Run the ball, take the points, chew the clock, win games 21-13. Winning is fun. I guess that's what I mean. What Jonathan's saying, different version of what I talked about. Of like, if you understand Idaho is going to need some help to get to 30 points, it feels like you take the points when you got him. Super George 111. We focus on play calling and fourth down calls, but maybe we don't turn the ball over 5 times. Now, Super George, 2 of those turnovers were because of play calling, but the other 3 were not. Well, actually, you might say 3 with that wide receiver pass. But your point is taken. There were 3 interceptions thrown by Idaho. It's very hard to beat a number 14 team on the road if you're going to turn the ball over that many times and be down players the way Idaho was. So I guess to try to sum this up, Trev, and I'll let you sum it up yourself too. My takeaway is, yeah, like it feels like there's a bit of a little chink in the Idaho armor. Yeah, it feels like maybe adjust your expectations a little bit, but not that much. Idaho should have won this game. Good teams, very good teams lose games they shouldn't have if it happens once. Like, hey, Montana made the national championship last year. They lost to NAU week 1 of the Big Sky season and looked completely lost. They came together. If Idaho's big loss is a game at Davis, they should have won. Like, hey, I'm okay with that. There's a lot of teachable stuff to me. Both from the coaching staff and players. There's a lot of teachable, correctable stuff from this game where really just a couple plays bouncing different for Idaho, and we're talking about a narrow win. So yeah, maybe adjust your expectations a teeny bit, but not too much. Like this still should be a playoff caliber team. This is still a team that most Big Sky teams are not looking forward to playing. I don't know. Like, hey, frustrated, but whatever. Like, this is a good place to be.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously the big takeaway is just making sure that these bugaboos from the coaching staff, go away. The play calling, the fourth down decisions, and all that stuff. They key in on where they made the mistakes and they fill those in on those goddamn analytic charts. And by now, those fucking analytic charts that Jason Eck is filling out should fucking be awful. His fourth down conversion charts for his team on where he goes for those fourth downs should be at like 20% or something like that. And it's like, but he probably has in big bold letters, always just like go for it or, go for the touchdown or something like that on his analytics sheet. But with all that being said, I still think that Idaho is on the right track.
Yeah, I was trying to look this up, but hey, in the in the ACU game and this game, Idaho is now 0 of 3 on Idaho's 0 of 3 on huge fourth down conversions. So yeah,
the analytics, Brian.
Yeah, man, I don't know. So Taylor Cash in the comment section responding to how valuable is having Jack Lane as acting coach. Taylor Cash minimal. He was giving pointers on the 2-point play. That wasn't close. Yeah, that 2-point play was rough. That was rough. I don't know what to say, Taylor. Like I don't disagree with the point. That was one of the heartbreaking points of the game. Is Idaho claws all the way back and then had no prayer on the called 2-point attempt.
No, they should just gave it to Eli on the end around. They should just gave it to Eli on the end around. I knew as soon as he was like moving back in the pocket, I'm like, this is going to be thrown in the back of the end zone. There's no fucking way.
Yeah, in the close games, Idaho, so that's Wyoming, ACU, and now UC Davis. Idaho on fourth down is 2 of 7. And let's just say those 5. Well, let's say those 5 that didn't work out. There were some pretty big ones in there that really, really influenced the rest of the game.
Yeah,
all right, dudes.
Those 2 times really show up on the analytics. So
yeah, I don't know, man, but whatever. I guess, hey, like the tale of the 2 takeaways we already have here. You guys have put together. I'm less down overall on the takeaways than Trevan, but I think that's representative of the fan base right now. What's your takeaway is either like you're pissed that Idaho lost the game they should have won, or you're saying, God damn it, they should have won, but that was a good team and they screwed up a ton. It's a slightly different version of the exact same thing. Anyway, Trevan, thanks for being here to keep us on the right track. But one more thing you guys can do to stay on your right track, check out the Tubs at the Club Substack, aka go to thetubstack.com or tubsattheclub.substack.com. Jeff Liedeker is doing written work for Tubs. That part's back. That part's back on. By the way, Patty Frakes is joining him for some written work too. Patty this morning released his picks for the Big Sky games this week. So it's just another area of coverage from Tubs the Club. So yeah, check out what Jeff's doing. Donate to the Substack if you want to. There's no paywall in the Substack. There probably isn't going to be. But hey, Jeff's working his ass off. So if you want to throw him a cup of coffee here and there, yeah, dude, go ahead. Or join patreon.com/Tubs the Club. Either way, hey, buy me whiskey, buy Jeff some coffee. It works no matter. It doesn't matter which end you go. So with that said, guys, thanks for tuning in. We're almost an hour after the game. It's almost midnight, not that far from midnight. We got 37 live listeners, still had just under 50 at the peak of the show. So everyone, thanks for coming in. I should be recording tomorrow to the Big Sky Podcast Network Power Rankings. And then we have our live show on Wednesday. Next week, we got to talk homecoming. And buy our goddamn tickets, guys. Buy our goddamn tickets. So, Trevan, thanks for joining.
Always.
Go Vandals.
Go Vandals.
And you guys expected I'd have something ready to play away. Yeah. Very funny. Very funny.
Yeah.